it's been a hot minute, you guys, but we are back, and we've got an amazing special guest today. We've got the incredibly talented Richard A. Morgan. Thank you, sir, so much for coming on the show today. How have you been doing?
I mean, thank you for the kind words. Yeah, I've been doing really good. It's been manic in the day job, but trying to find time to make comics. That's what I'm more interested in. So yeah, it's mad at the moment.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I mean, a lot of people, they wonder, how we go about this. Most of the time we 99% of the time we have day jobs. We do
Yeah,
comics on the side, and I mean they don't realize, what all goes into all this, and how do you balance it, Richard? I haven't found the way to perfectly balance all that yet.
the way I found it was the way I got into it, right? And it's really weird because um, I knew I couldn't do it drawing the traditional way on paper. And so I knew I had to do it on the iPad. So I paint, and I always draw and I paint on the iPad. And I could only do that because I realized that was a tool I could have on my commute to work and back again. So that gave me at least 2 hours each day. I mean, I still have to, when I go to work, it takes longer to get there, but at least I could do it on the train. And 2 hours a day gave me that time. And then I can, on the weekends and evenings. But if I was doing it on paper, it wouldn't have worked. So I was lucky to find the right thing for me.
Right, right. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. When I first started out, I was going to do my first book traditionally, and I probably got well over halfway into it, and I got to looking at this, and I had never done any digital work before.
Mm.
I'd heard a lot of artists talk about it, and you know, I, but I knew immediately that was the way to go. I mean, it is so I got a program, started working with it. I used. Do you what program do you use? I use Clip Studio Paint.
Yeah, so I use. Is that on the iPad or is that on the Mac?
No, Clip Studio. You can get it on either. You just have to get
That's,
it directly from Clip Studio. Yeah.
yeah. So I use Procreate. I mean, first
Okay.
started because I mean I've been using Photoshop since blimey '93.
Okay.
And I started painting with it probably about 7, 8. Actually, I think it's about 9 years ago. I was painting in Photoshop, but I was finding it really hard, even with a Wacom. It wasn't working for me. And the minute I got an iPad Apple Pencil, I just found it felt like I was painting and drawing. And I think that really that helped it for me. And also, I mean, you'd probably find the same with Clip Studio, but does it record a time lapse of you painting and drawing?
It does. It does. It'll record it. Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
it's all the programs are pretty much the same. You know, I think they're all you have to pay so much a month now or something like that. I know a lot of them are like Photoshop. They're charging a monthly fee. Studio's latest version is charging a monthly fee, but they're very close. You know,
Yeah.
Clip Studio it's created for comics. That's the one thing I love
Right.
about it. It has all the pre-settings in there. You can go in uh, your word boxes. You can go in. You can edit those. You can. I mean, it's got everything that you could possibly need for doing a comic and presets, and you can go in and tweak little things. So, I mean, it's the one
Yeah.
that's worked the best for me.
I mean, that's interesting because, like, what I can't do on um, Procreate, I'm sure there's ways of doing it, but I can't at the moment. is set all the type and all the onomatopoeia and all the
Right.
dialogue, and I do that in Photoshop. So I'll get the high res art painted on the iPad, bring it over to the Mac, and then start bringing it into Photoshop, and then that's when I then start laying out everything. But also, I mean, I'm used to that anyway, like because I do stuff for print, so I'm used to how I can then set things up through the software. It'd be nice to replace Adobe in the end, but at the moment it works.
Right. So tell me this: where did this idea come from, man? I mean, it's so unique. I was reading this book, and I mean, this. I haven't read it all. I'm well into it, though. It's just something. It just blew me away, Richard. It really did. A great story.
I mean, great question. I mean, just while I get into it, I've just seen the Crooked Painter on chat. They've said he said he's just got his 10 issues arrived through the post. I'm glad they arrived. So I'm always pleased when something arrives for people who backs it, you know, especially with the post office and the craziness at the moment. It's funny, right? Because the idea came long before I'd worked on the comic. I suppose that happens to everyone, isn't it? Right? But I mean, long before I had the real story, I had this idea it was going to be like a post-apocalyptic future London. Everything has gone to crap, and we've got this woman she doesn't know who she is, and then that's all I had. And this was back when I was doing. So I did the first Kickstarter was a sketchbook, which was just a series of like paintings and drawings of the character, where it was like different styles, and I was starting with like an ink style. You know, I then started to move to the painted styles, and I was learning how to do quite a lot of things. So I mean, that was like one of the first oil paintings that was ever done. I knew I had something, but I didn't have the story yet. You know, I know I wanted to be her. I mean, I like painting people in shiny costumes. And then we had lockdown. We had the pandemic.
Right.
And also, I was at home. I was still working. I was lucky enough to still be working. We was working remotely from home, and I started to think actually there's a real interesting like parallel here, and that's where everything felt like a ghost town. Everything was empty, you know, and it's like something has happened. And for those who have started, and I know you've read some of the issues. It's like there's a scene where you have the politicians, which look a bit like the politician we had at the time. I give him a different name, but he looks very similar to him.
Right.
And he would go on every day. He would go on in front of this big podium at Downing Street, and the Prime Minister would go through all this mantra of it was like hands, face, space, right? So it was like wash your hands, cover your face, and keep a distance. And it was about staying at home, protecting the NHS, and saving lives. And that mantra of that made me think, actually, what if it wasn't a pandemic, but I called it the pandemonic? And that's when it was an invasion of demons where they took over everything in collaboration with the government. And so it was about this broadcast going out to people saying, stay at home, avoid the demons, you know, as if we're trying to save people. And they weren't. They wanted no trouble on the streets so they could basically take over stuff. And I thought that was a quite interesting way to flip it. And then we used the whole thing, she had amnesia, to try and introduce us to the world that we didn't know about, you know, because she's learning as she goes. And that was really the idea.
Well, it's awesome, man. I'm loving it so far. I can't wait to see where this thing's going to go. We've got K-pop junkie in here. We've got the Crooked Painter. Thanks so much for jumping on, you guys. If you've got any questions for Richard, I'm sure he would love to hear them. He can see the chat as well. So if you have anything, just throw it in there, and we'll answer as we go. You know, while we're just discussing this thing. So tell me this, Richard. What do you see this? I mean, would you like to see this possibly go into film? Would you like to see maybe an animated series? I mean, the sky's the limit, man. I mean, really, this.
I mean, thank you. I would. I mean, originally I was thinking, film, TV series would be amazing. I don't think they could do it, but animated series, absolutely. Like, I'm a huge 80s and 90s anime fan. And even beyond that, when I think back to things like, do you remember seeing Aeon Flux, the cartoon?
Yes, I love
Love
that shit. Yeah,
and that style, that approach, I'd love to do something like Blam in that thing, because then she could defy physics. She could,
right.
run around in hills and kick demon ass and do all sorts of stuff in the way
Exactly.
anime could. With the speed lines rushing past and everything. I think it'd be amazing. I'd love to do
Oh
that.
yeah. And I tell you that they've done so many interesting things with animation just in the last couple of years. You look at the series, what was it, League of Legends that come on Netflix, Arcane, just
Yeah,
absolutely gorgeous animation,
yeah.
And I'm having a brain fart right now, but the comic by not Hickman, oh God,
Oh,
anybody in chat help us out. It's on Amazon.
Invincible.
Yes, that's it.
Yes. Yeah,
That
yeah,
show is amazing as well.
yeah.
And it
It's brilliant.
really it dives into the violence and the gore and the grit of the book, and brings that out in
Yeah.
an animation style, and I absolutely love it.
That's the thing. I'd love to do something like that. And I was thinking, once I get to the end of season 2, because Glam's told in 2 seasons. It's 8 issues a season. I'd love to do like a pilot or a 5-minute animation. Because I work in, part of my job is in a little bit of broadcast, so I do stuff with special effects and things like that. It's on some of my projects. Um, I'd love to try it. Especially like the painted style of backgrounds, and then this sort of cell feel. I think could be
Right.
amazing. Yeah.
That would be gorgeous if you done it. If they could get it close to your style that you do the book in, that would just be absolutely gorgeous.
It's a great question from Crooked Painter saying about a drawing in tier. We've actually been doing it over the different issues in Kickstarter. So we sometimes offer for people to be in the comic. And I think it's been since issue 2 different people have been in. Like I think issue 2 was they were just a picture. All right to show images just in case it spoils the plot, or is that all right?
No, go ahead, Richard. Go ahead.
So this was the first time somebody was in it, which was this board. So I don't know if you've seen things like 28 Days Later,
Oh
where it's
yeah,
like the
definitely.
missing board, where it's that sort of thing. So somebody was one of the backers, this guy, and went in.
Gotcha. Oh wow.
But that was the first one. But actually, on the third one, we started to open it up, and so 3 people wanted to be demons who were underneath the heads are actually real people. So there's 3 people there that died. They got shot by Blam, but
Wow.
they've been turned into demons anyway, so they got painted in. And then later on, there's things like there's freedom fighters who are there. The new one in issue 11 is going to be some people who are in league with the government. So there was a thing that we put into the comic in around about issue 5. I don't know. I don't know where you are on that, Jerry.
I'm right in that neighborhood, but go ahead, man. I'm going to read it. You're not going to spoil
Spoil
me.
it.
I'm going to jump in and
So
enjoy all of it anyway.
there's a bit where she's going through the Houses of Parliament, and this is closed now, this bit. But there's a part on the page where she's hiding in the Houses of Parliament, and you can see the QR code. And the QR code takes you to a website where you can apply to be visitor liaison, right? And they'll get to wear glass. The people who have, I think there's 5 people who have applied, and they've got the role, and they're
Oh
going to
wow.
get glasses that the Prime Minister wears, because it's a symbol of you being on that side. A little pass, and then they're going to be in the comic and get killed.
That's incredible.
you know,
That's incredible, man.
things like that as well. So we try to put in like little Easter eggs into the comic as we go. And those people won that because they found it and applied. So you know, so if they're up for it, they're going to get painted into the new issue. But yeah, we always offer out some new roles. You know, so yeah,
That's really cool. Um, uh, you answered one of my next questions. This is definitely going on for a while, but do you have an ending picked out? Do you, let me put it this way: how many
Yeah.
seasons do you see for Blam and Glam?
So
Roughly, ballpark.
there's definitely two. So and that'll take us to issue 16.
Right.
And the question on and I've written the outline for all the issues. What I do is I write the whole outline. I then go in and I start writing the whole issue, and then sometimes I change the outline as I'm going as things improve.
Gotcha.
And but at the moment there's a natural end on 2 for the arc. I don't know whether I'm gonna open it up with something that could lead to a season 3, or if I'm gonna let that naturally come to an end, and then tell some side stories with some of the characters, because I think they're all going in interesting spaces. It could, you know, I did always joke there's something in Glam's, we call her Glam because we don't know her name, in Glam's backstory, where we could do a prequel story, which is nothing to do with the demons and it's about her life. But it's a very different story, and I don't know if that's right. That might just be like a one shot or something. But I think it'll end on 2, which gives us 16 issues, or I'll open it up into a third and take it into an unexpected direction. I've got to see how it goes, though. Yeah.
I got you. I got you.
How about you? Because with End of Days, because I've started reading these. Thanks for sending these through. You know, I'm
Oh,
loving this. I'm loving Bounty.
thank you, sir. Thank you.
Because I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there's this one as well, which I take
The
it as
prequel. Yes, sir.
yeah.
That's the prequel.
You did a prequel thing, yeah. So I'm looking forward to getting through to those. Does that keep going past 4?
It does. I'm planned for the first arc. We're going to issue 12 for End of Days. Now, Bounty's kind of wide open. Man, I just got this crazy idea, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm going to do this." You know, Star Wars. I love Star Wars. I grew up with Star Wars, and I said, "Well, what if I had put my insane spin on it?" And I just took that and run with it, and I had so much fun with that first issue. I don't have. I know where it's going.
Yeah.
I just don't know how long it's going to take me to get there yet. You know, I'm enjoying it so much. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how far we're going to go on that one.
Yeah,
but
I love that
you know,
because you have fun with it and you go exactly.
right.
You know the end goal, but sometimes you just move the end goal a little bit, or you might go actually
Yeah.
I want to bring it to a conclusion. Or yes, I think that's cool.
And see, the thing about End of Days, it's angels. So when I first thought of the story, I knew I wanted to go in that time period, early 19, right at the turn of the 19th century. You know, I wanted that. I had that set in my head from the very beginning, and I also, as I wrote the book and went on with it, I was like, you know, I would really love to do something during World War II, where the Nazis were going after all the religious relics. I said that's just ripe for something right there. So I have something planned for that time period. I want to go back into the Middle Ages and do a story. So that one, it's going to go all over the place. You're going to have,
because you've opened it up.
You know, right. And it's just, that's my baby. End of Days is my baby. I come up with that when I was in high school, and I sat on it for years and years and years. And my daughter, she just stayed on me. She's like, well, why? If she finally told me, she said, "You're not dead." She said, "Me and my brother were grown. Why don't you make this thing? What are you
Yeah, yeah.
waiting on?" And I said, "You know what?" I said, "You're exactly right." I said, "How about you help me write it, and I will do it." So she helped me. She's an incredible writer. So she helped me start writing the first few issues and helped me with the dialogue. I had the plot. I knew exactly where I wanted it to go. It was just a little in between dialogue that I had the issues with. And she really jumped in and helped me with all that. And now, well, she's got my granddaughter, so she's busy with all that. So
Congratulations.
I went full time, writing. She's jumped off of it, but she's my editor. So she'll come in and look over it and then give me the thumbs up or, "Hey, Dad, this sucks. You got to take it back to page one rewrite.
I love that. And going through End of Days, because you're set in London, and I thought that's really cool. I mean, it's easy for me because I'm here. I
Right.
work in London, but I live out in Essex, which is just on the outskirts. And so I know London, but I think what's good is you got a really good feel for it, and I love where it's going. I think you've got Big Ben, and so have I. There's
Right.
something you have to do with that landmark, and I think is really cool. So
Exactly.
because you talk about the Middle Ages, there's stuff that you start to discover about the story of Blam and Glam around issue 7 or 8, where you realize it's a series of events that go back in history.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, and so and again, it gives you opportunity to do stuff with it, and I'm not going to touch on those because I always like when people get to those bits and go, "Is that what they expected to happen?" But yeah, it's like there's some made up bits in it. There's stations that don't exist, and I quite like bringing extra stuff. It's always have a bit of fun with it.
I tell you, that's another thing I really love about independent comics. The sky's the limit, you know. Just like you were talking about, you get into these stories and you know where you want to go, but then it takes on a whole life of its own. It's so organic,
Yeah,
and you create these characters, and you're like, well, there's not going to be much to them, and you wind up pulling, little things from people that you've known all throughout your life, and then
yeah,
you fall in love with this character, and it becomes almost like a living, breathing thing to you. And you come up with all these incredible backstories for them, and then you really fall in love with the characters. Well, hey, I'm going to give this one this story arc, and we're going
yeah.
to go off in this direction, and it takes on a whole life of its own.
There's a and this connects. I mean, I love that, and this connects with that, and this bit also connects with the question Crooked Painter had about people, and I think it's the 4th issue is where we are introduced to the resistance fighters, and they were people. Some of them were people I've connected with, like the comic reviewers. Some of them are people who um, they paid to be in the comic, and there was one guy, and I remember I said, I need a shot of you standing up as reference. You're going to be posing.
Right, right.
And he said, Rich, that's totally cool. I can give you reference. I can't stand up. I'm in a wheelchair.
Oh, wow.
Right. And he said, I'll do it how, and I said, and I replied back and I said, right, I said, brilliant. I said, you tell me what you want me. I can paint you and you're standing up, or I could paint you. You're in your chair and it's an all-terrain kick-ass wheelchair. And he went, I'm in, right? And so
That's cool.
he appears like here. He appears with his chair, and then a couple of issues later, he then gets a moment where he's riding that in the desert, and it's like a battle scene, and there's people on his chair as well, and they're all fighting demons, and it was like
Really cool.
I was really when he said, "Oh, I'm in," I was like, "Brilliant! This is what we're gonna do." And I remember on before the battle issue, so that issue where we're saying about painters, somebody got in touch and said, "I really want my wife to be in it as one of the resistance fighters, but can you make her like super sexy? And I said, yeah. I said, but to be honest, there's probably not that role there and then they want. You know, I said, but I can do something in the next issue where there's a character I'm thinking of that Glam has to rescue, and we do that instead, and he's up for it. And so he was like, yeah. So she's in there as the character she rescues, and comes back again and again as well. There's a couple of people. Some people are resistance fighters, and a lot of them die because that's the story. Do you know what I mean? That's
right.
You know, you need a little bit of
Gotta have a body count.
yeah, body exactly. But one of them, I said to him, I originally said to some of the people, you're coming back in this issue, but I'm going to kill you off. Are you cool? And they went, yeah, the you know, big battle scene, the bloodier the better, all that stuff. That's the stuff he loved. And then one of the guys said, yeah, and they said, actually, do you mind being? And you're like this. Will you mind being my wedge? And he said, okay. And so he comes back, he survives the battle, and he comes back, and he's back again and again and again. I always liked that about the original Star Wars, you know. Wade was the one guy who got out of the
right.
You know what I mean?
One guy.
Yeah. You know, so yeah, there's a guy who comes back as my wedge, which I always think is quite cool.
That's really cool. That is amazing.
You've got an amazing collection behind you. I'm sorry, I know
oh,
you got
thank you.
but I'm looking at like that's a signed Batman, is it?
Yes, sir. Everything back behind me is signed. All these prints are signed. That's actually, I have some of Michael Turner's work signed. That's actually not signed by him. That was a variant that he done before he passed
Oh, right.
away. But it is signed by Tom King and David Finch that did the regular cover for that
Yeah.
issue. We've got the Olivier Coipel Magic Order sketch issue #1. I've got a Jim Lee back here, his first
Oh,
issue
nice.
of Uncanny X-Men. Mark Silvestri's first.
What one is the uncanny? Oh, actually, that's 272 or 271, something like that. Is that the
Let's see.
Shire?
This is 220. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah, I can see on the right. That's Silvestri, isn't it, on the right? The Jim
Right.
Lee one on the left, was that the Shire ones?
That's number 248. That's his first full issue.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, cool. I'm looking at the colours and I'm thinking it might have been the one before Extinction Agenda. But anyway, no, that's cool. Mate, so I interrupted. You had a question, sorry.
Oh man, I totally lost track of it. But anyway, that's the cool thing about this show. We can go anywhere we want to go with it. But yeah, I mean, what were your influences that kind of got you into comics? What artists kind of pulled you in?
So there's a couple books I wish I could pull out. They're currently stacked up over here. There's some key influences. Like my biggest influences are people like hang on a sec. So I'm just going to pull the reference because I've got one to hand. Bill Sienkiewicz.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Electro-Assassin. I saw this in a comic shop up on a shelf, and I went, I'll just buy it. And they went, well, it's issue 5, and I went, I'll buy it. And then I went and got the other issues, and it's amazing. You know, Bill's stuff is amazing.
He's incredible.
Yeah, but before Bill, I was inspired by Ashley Wood.
Yeah.
And Ashley Wood, I didn't know about the comic side of things. I'm a big Metal Gear Solid fan. I'm a massive Star Wars fan, hence the Falcon over there. But I'm a massive Metal Gear Solid fan, and I loved. You know, I've got a huge collection of Metal Gear Solid stuff. But I always loved when I had my PSP and they did Peace Walker, which was just an amazing. Actually, before then they did Portable Ops, which was good. It wasn't amazing. It was a great game, but it wasn't the. You know, Peace Walker is top of what it does. But they had cutscenes that had cartoon style, and I love the art director Yoji Shankawa.
Oh God, yes.
It felt like Shankawa stuff, but it wasn't. It was something slightly different. And I found out it was Ashley Wood, and because he'd done the comic version for IDW of Metal Gear Solid as comics, he then got asked to do the cutscenes for the game. But I didn't know about those comics. I played the cutscenes, gone, this is amazing. Then found out it was
Right.
Ashley Wood. And then went down a whole rabbit hole of his figures with amazing paintings on the front, and then the books he does. And so I'm inspired by both. I'm inspired by both those. But my love for comics came from, I think it was about it was 7 in 82. A comic was reintroduced called Eagle, which used to be out in the 50s, and it had the main story was Dan Dare, which was drawn by the Frank Hampson, which was just beautiful. We that was in the 50s. We didn't have that. We had the modern day version, and it was art by Ian Kennedy, which was just amazing. You'd only get 4 pages an issue of Dan Dare, but it was amazing, and that was my introduction. I remember halfway through the first year, they introduced this backstory where the Dare that we are dealing with for the 80s reboot is the great-great-grandson of the original Dan Dare.
Wow.
Which is the 1950s strip, but they're in the future. In the 50s, they were talking about the 90s, right? So
Gotcha.
that was the future for them. There's a story in the with the great-great-grandson where the villain is the Meccan, right? And it's like this guy with a big brain controls everything. And the Meccan was trying to work out why Dan Dare was just, why he was his arch nemesis. And they went back to uncover this story, which they made up. It was unrelated to the original Eagle, but I thought it was a really cool backstory. And they said that Dan Dare was originally a 1945 pilot. He was a pilot in the Second World War, and then started test flying jets in like the 50s. And he has a first sighting of 2 UFOs that crash. And as they crash, he goes into a stream and gets pulled into 1996. Right. So the world is different. It's a very different thing. And so he becomes pilot of the future, right? Which was always the thing they said. And then we get that. And I always thought that was quite an amazing story that connected with some of the 1950 stuff. I went down a whole rabbit hole of looking at that art.
Together, yeah.
Exactly. And that artwork is like, Eagle was A3 in the 50s. It was massive size. It was like the size of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 11 by 17. Gotcha.
They're huge, and it was and the art is stunning. Unfortunately, they're all in a tub, and I can't get to them. But yeah, that's my influences. What about you? What's yours?
Man, I gotta be honest with you. A lot of mine are back behind me. Jim Lee, Todd McFarlane was my jumping on point though. What he did with Spider-Man was just absolutely incredible. I mean, it just jumped off the page. I had never seen anything like it, until he started doing those incredible panels. And then Jim Lee followed suit and started doing the larger panels. And Silvestri, even Jim Lee and McFarlane will admit it that Silvestri is more of the true artist out of all of them, all the image guys. And his work, even his early work, is just absolutely gorgeous. If you go and you look at the sketches, I mean, you can just see, he self-taught. It's gorgeous stuff. But yeah, that's kind of my, and of course Frank Miller. I mean, my God, the Dark Knight, when he come out with that was a game changer. He changed comics forever.
See so I always remember, right? I didn't get properly into comics until 91, right?
Gotcha.
So I read the Eagle, and that was my thing. And then during the mid 80s was when the graphic novels started coming out, and was reading Dark Knight, Killing Joke. There's all those sorts of different books, right? And and you go, and they all feel unconnected, right? I wasn't reading consistent stuff, and it felt like different takes on stuff. And then, of course,
Right.
Batman came out in '89, and everyone goes mad, and and then
Yeah.
it's cool, But I remember I started reading. I can't remember what it was. I think I went into this comic shop it was local to me, and they had all the classic stuff up on the wall, and I was pulled in by a Fantastic Four cover, and I went, that looks amazing. And then all of a sudden, I was like, X-Men. I was exactly where I was like. It was when I started collecting was the time it was just about to do the new run of X-Men Volume 2, which would be Jim Lee's one.
Right.
Just before and the art was insane. Wells Pataccio's doing X Factor.
Gorgeous. Yeah.
Silvestri's doing. Was he doing
Wolverine?
Yeah,
I think he had already left and had jumped on Wolverine by that time.
And then you've got. I didn't read the New Mutants, although there was a couple of issues where the crossovers were. So I picked up X-Force, and I started to do those things. And I got into that story and had to go backwards. And so I started getting back through all the classics, back through Execution Song, all that stuff that was amazing, going all the way then back into like the ones you're looking at, where Mark Silvestri is doing that run. Like Inferno was like, I'm sold.
Oh
like,
God, yeah. That was some incredible, crazy stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, just
but it's
totally
mad,
out there.
You're right, because the Todd McFarlane influence, like when you look at Silvestri's work, is amazing, right?
Right.
A lot of it, though, in the early years, is small. The panels are small, the images are small, which means you don't get a lot of detail. But he can do stuff with little detail, and it feels detailed. It feels amazing.
Exactly.
But when Todd starts doing that, and then Jim comes on board, and then everyone else starts making bigger, and then you see another side to Silvestri's work. It's amazing, and that
it really just opened it up. It really did.
But it's funny because I had a short period where I think it was like 91 to about 93, and I remember one day going to the comic shop and they're going, "Don't you know they're all leaving?" And this is what's his name is doing on the TV on the YouTube clip. The writer of Invincible, he goes into the comic book shop and they say, "What's this?" And they go, "They're all leaving." And I remember the comic guy saying to me, all these artists have jumped and have set up this thing called Image, and we know no idea of what it's going to be. But do you want to buy some stuff? And we're like, okay, we'll see. But at that point, I was like, okay, so what's going to happen? And luckily, it was Andy Kubert carrying on. Adam Kubert was doing some. We had Greg. I'm going to say it wrong.
Greg Capullo, yeah. He jumped on X-Force.
X-Force, and the stuff on X-Force he did, because I remember
incredible stuff.
No, Execution Song, wasn't it? Because Extinction Agenda is
that's right.
Execution Song, and I was like, oh my god, I'm collecting this, and you got you're doing that, and I'm like, amazing.
And that's when Jay Lee first hit the scene too, with X Factor.
Yeah, Jay Lee was. You're right, because Jay Lee took X Factor in a really different direction. I thought it was brilliant. And then they did Fatal Attractions.
Yeah,
which is like the highest point for me. Like after the guys have gone to form Image, Fatal Attractions is the highest point, and then all of a sudden, for me it all went wrong.
Yeah,
it was.
I completely agree with.
What was the Phalanx Covenant? Is that right?
That was the Phalanx Covenant was hot garbage to me. I looked
at the art, and they just started to do digital coloring, and it looked really, to me, it looked really bad.
Right. They hadn't perfected all of it, and they were trying to compete with Image, and they weren't there yet. And it just, not only that, but the writing is what really suffered during that time. It was, they didn't have a clear view forward. They were just throwing shit at the wall, basically.
Yeah, and that's because Claremont had gone by then, wasn't it?
Right. And Claremont was gone.
I remember there was an issue in X-Men And Sinister is at the end. Is at the end of this issue, and he says there's a third Summers brother, and I'm like, oh my god, who's that? Who's that going to be? You know,
Right.
is it Sinister? You know, and then because of everything happened, I went, I don't give a shit, and left. Sorry, I didn't mean to swear, but you know, I'm like,
Yeah.
fuck it. You know, same as like because there was that thing about who killed the X-Men. There was Gambit and there was Bishop.
Yeah.
Somebody's told me who that is, who actually did it, but at the time, you know, I didn't know until about probably a couple of years ago, and even then, I don't know if I'm convinced by the story. But you know, when Bishop's in the future and he's talking to LeBeau, you know, in an older
right.
says, and he's like, I ain't gonna tell you, pup, or whatever. He's, I can't do the accent, but you know what I mean. You know, he's like I mean, I've got to say this right. How good is is Gambit in the Deadpool film?
Oh, incredible.
I'm
Incredible.
like, what are you saying? And I'm like, I don't care what you're saying. I love it.
It was music to my ears. And I hear that Channing Tatum is signed on for Doomsday, so he'll be back.
Brilliant. He was like him doing that was just magic. You know, I thought
It was.
But you had an interesting point on colors, right? Because I always loved the old. I'm actually a fan of the old mechanical colors,
Right.
the old process, because you had to get very artistic on how they do it. I'm still amazed that they're drawing lines around the colors and saying it's going to be this, and then somebody has to mechanically work out how they're going to do it. I mean,
right.
That's impressive, you know. But what they should have done was dip their toes really carefully. I'm going to show you a book. This is a new book. Have you ever read this?
I don't believe I have.
Okay, so if you can still get the hardback, it's worth getting. They might be sold out now, but this is by Dark Horse, and this is Daniel Freeman, who's the writer. Daniel Freeman, the writer, and Robert Semelin. And Robert is the artist. I saw this work and I was blown away by it. And he also does. He's a designer and an illustrator, and so he does these amazing,
Oh wow,
soundtrack covers. They're stunning, right? He can turn his hand to lots of stuff, right? It's beautiful.
Oh
wow. And I was so impressed by his stuff. I said, "Can I get you to do?" That's when I introduced. So I do a standard cover and a red cover. So like, there's one of the reds.
Right.
I get somebody else to do a yellow cover, and then I do a different guest artist to do the pink each time. And Robert Semelin did my first pink one, and he did it in the CGI style for me, which is something I wanted. He models he draws beautifully. Like this is his black and whites, right?
Oh wow,
he's incredible.
Yeah.
And the colors are amazing in this book as well. He draws and colors this book. I mean, let me show you.
I've got to find that for sure.
This is, when someone's got a knife in their back, you've got an interesting story on your hands.
Oh, definitely.
And Carly is a one shot, right, which they produced, and it's absolutely brilliant. Like the art is phenomenal, and what he does with the colors is it's digitally colored. And yes, there's lighting effects, but he creates this beautiful way of making the colors work. He really does. He really does craft it, and I think that's where if Marvel hadn't rushed it, they could have found their thing. This is quite interesting because I got Robert to do the pink cover for issue 8. And then he got in touch, and now they're going to do a paperback, and I'm going to have a piece in the paperback. I don't know if I'm supposed to say
Wow, that's amazing.
But there's but it's like a new printing and everything. So I'm really, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. So
we won't tell anybody.
But yeah, if you can check out Carly, Kali. It's
I definitely will. I'm writing that down right now.
Yeah.
Kali.
But
That's the gorgeous stuff.
I've just realised on my shelf there's a couple of things, right? So one of the guys, who's a fan of the comic, did this for me.
Oh wow!
Basically, he sculpted, did some stuff on there, and then painted it all up. And actually,
That's
because she
really
has
cool.
this plus sign and this, you can't see it now, but she has this star on her face. They'll glow in the dark at night, which I thought was quite
Wow.
cool. But before that, long before we had the story, there was another guy who was building. He built a version of it, an early version of a demon for me, which, as you see, has 4 legs. Which
Really
is
cool.
That's what they
Yeah,
did.
definitely.
And I was like, oh my God, that was amazing. I couldn't believe they did that.
Really cool stuff.
But yeah, it's amazing because I'm going to Comic-Con tomorrow, Friday. So in the UK, I'm going to the UK Comic-Con, MCM. And I'm going to meet up with, I'm not going to stand there. I know some people who have in Artist Alley. I keep saying I'm going to reply. I keep forgetting. But I'm going to go along and see some of the people there. I mean, I'd love to. One of the guys I go with is a fan of the comic, so we go a couple of times each year. And then he
That's
introduces
really cool.
people. So it's quite cool to meet up with people and know that there's fans around the world who are collecting this and reading it. You must have the same feeling knowing your comic is
Oh
like,
man, that's yeah. When you mentioned that, I was sitting here thinking, it's just absolutely incredible that somebody out there loves your work, and they I've mailed to like nine different countries, and that's still every time I say that out loud, it just blows my mind.
yeah, it's mad, isn't
And
it?
it's amazing. It's such a great feeling that people you find. I say this all the time. People, well, how do you do it? What do you do? How do you go about doing this thing?
Yeah,
And Richard, you just got to put it out there. Your
yeah,
audience will find you.
yeah.
You
It's
just got to do the work.
that's it. And start small. I started with a
Right.
sketch, and the sketchbook was, I didn't even actually do a sketch. I was just doing sketches, and I realized that I put it out. I didn't know if anyone would do it, and 25 people bought it, and their names are on the inside covers. And there's lots of, and it's just a sketchbook. It's not like, it was just the collection of the different things I was doing, and people were interested. Originally, I was going to do Blam and Glam as a 8-issue graphic novel, like an
Gotcha.
8-chapter graphic novel.
Right.
And I'm glad I
Right.
didn't, because as you know, if you get out one thing, that's it.
Yeah.
You get out an issue, right, and you start your audience. You get out issue 2, and then you say an issue 1's available, and you get some more people.
Right.
That's what you do with each one. You're building that momentum. Are you
Exactly.
using Kickstarter for yours?
I am. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, I use Kickstarter as well. I thought about going. Have you tried Indiegogo? I thought about going and doing like a dual launch, like on Kickstarter and Indiegogo at the same time, because I've talked to several people. It's very tribal. Some people that are on Indiegogo won't do Kickstarter, and vice versa. So
I mean,
I think we're missing a lot of audience by at least not dipping our toe in the water. You know what I mean?
so one of my friends, Gary Parkin, who, when I first did my first comic Kickstarter, he got in touch and we built up quite. What you find cool about this is you build up a rapport with other creators,
Right.
on Kickstarter and also across Instagram in different spaces. And we've been chatting for years now, because I think the first issue I did in 2021. I think so. I think it was. I'm terrible. It's flying by, so I can't.
It is. It is.
Yeah, it was. I think it was 2021. The first issue went out, and so we've been talking since then, and we're always looking at each other's work and bouncing off each other.
Gotcha.
and he did do the Indiegogo as well. I don't think it worked out well for as well for him, but he has a
Right.
good following on Kickstarter. So once in a while, it's worth doing something different on on Indiegogo. But yeah, I think trying out different things is good. But I mean, I find Kickstarter is quite a good platform. It's got even better now that new
It has.
guy's taken over, who's really pushing the tools, really pushing things. Like now, I mean, you remember it's like you did surveys before, and every
Right.
single survey was like if I had 12 rewards, then you got to do 12 surveys, and then you got to track
Right.
it. No, you don't. Now you have your individual.
It's so much more user friendly now.
Exactly. And
It really is.
send it out to people, and it'll just pull in the relevant questions now, which I think
Right.
is pretty.
It's come so far just in the last couple of years, especially I've noticed. But yeah, I did my first one. I believe it was 21 as well. And from there to where we are now with Kickstarter is night and day. I mean, it's so much easier than it was to begin with.
Yeah. It's funny. You're absolutely right. You said it earlier. You're absolutely right in terms of people just got to try something. You
Right.
don't have to do a full comic. You might just I'm going to do a 4-page zine, or I'm going to collaborate with somebody else,
Right.
and we might do a couple short stories.
Yeah, do an anthology. Jump on.
Yeah,
There's plenty of people that do those.
yeah. And it's one of my other friends who I'm going to see on Friday at MCM. He always does a thing in Nights Alley. He's actually a writer. And he is doing a Kickstarter that ends. I think it ends tomorrow. I think we're into the last 24 hours, and it's a book about making your first comic. And I got a sneak peek read, and I was like, "This is brilliant." He's like, "What do you think?" And I go, "It's brilliant." And it is. I didn't get a chance to read the whole thing. I just stopped reading and went, I backed it. Once he then launched it, I backed it.
Is it Labels? Is that the name of it?
No, it's hang on a sec. It's so Matt Garvey is who does it. It's called How to Make Your First Comic, and it's on Kickstarter. And he's got them printed already. Sorry.
Okay. I'll definitely check that out.
And it's really cool, and actually what he's done is now it's he got to a certain level of backing, and he went, right, guys, whoever backs it, I'm going to give you a free digital how to get it on, how to do your first Kickstarter book. So he always adds value, right? He always, his books are super cool. We always make sure that he's super accessible. Anyone ever wants to ask him about making comics and making Kickstarter and stuff, he's like, just ask. And he'll have people talk to him for ages at a Comic-Con, and he'll happily but he's put it into one book, and I've said, there's things in it that I'm like, yeah, I need to do that, and it doesn't matter. I've done 10 issues now and I'm still learning.
Oh, definitely. I'm 6 issues in, counting bounty, and I mean, I'm constantly learning something new every campaign. I pick up a new trick. It's just it's constantly the whole thing's evolving. There's new things. These metal covers. That's the thing now. Those are accessible. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, I haven't found. Someone's told me where I can get some made. I've not done them yet. And I mean, it could be quite cool. Yeah, it could be amazing. It's funny. Did you see the heavy metal Kickstarter?
I did. I did.
Oh, I did as well, right? And all of a sudden, everyone's going mental. They're going, "Oh, it's come out in the stores before this, that, and the other, and everything." Shit. Yeah. To be fair to them, they had a lot of people back the comic, and they promised they would ship it before it went out to stores, and unfortunately, it didn't happen. It is unfortunately sometimes this stuff, because they're trying to fill all these orders, and I remember everyone's going ape shit, right? And all of a sudden,
Yeah.
there was this post that said, "We are really sorry. You know, unfortunately, this is what's happened." And I remember the next day, people were still going apeshit on it, and I'm like, "Look, this is what happens, right? We know because
It
we
is
fulfilled."
what it is.
Right?
Yeah.
And yeah, exactly. We're like, yes, and then they said, right, we've listened, right, and we feel your anger, and we totally agree with you, right, and we're gonna take that and we're gonna turn it into something, and we're gonna create the angry mob, and you're the angry mob, and it gets you,
Yeah.
and it's a badge of honor, right,
Right.
and you get access to stuff that no one else will. You know, you got lifetime membership. We're gonna do a logo. I'm like, all
Oh,
right,
the
this is
t-shirts. Have an angry mob t-shirt.
exactly
Yeah.
how you're wearing pride, you know. And then they did an email the next day that said, "We just want to be clear. Even if you weren't angry, you can still be in the angry mob. You know, you're all the first backers.
Yeah.
It's and they're right, and they turned the script
Right.
by going, we fucked up. You know,
Yeah. They
it
owned it.
wasn't
That's
intentional.
all you gotta do when you
Yeah,
own it. You know.
yeah. And I just love what they did. You know, and I still haven't received. It doesn't matter. It's coming. I know it's
No,
coming.
I know it's
Right,
coming.
it will arrive. It will
I,
arrive. I know.
I've I've been waiting on one Kickstarter. Well, actually, a couple over 2 years now. But they're constantly sending updates. You know, so I know at least they're staying in touch. You
Yeah,
know, they're not just leaving you dangling in the wind, so to
yeah.
speak. They had some issues come up in real life, you know, with their family and stuff, and they had to postpone the book. I completely understand that.
Yeah, it's funny. There's my first ever Kickstarter I backed was 10 years ago. 10 years ago, and it didn't, and it funded, but it's never been supplied. And I'm
Oh
like,
wow.
by go, that's the nature of it. And
Yeah,
unfortunately it was for a game they were doing called Star Mazer, which looked amazing, right?
yeah,
And and actually it was a useful thing to do because it helped kickstart where I am now. If I hadn't backed that Kickstarter, regardless of it supplying or not, I'm like, it's gone now. I'm not worried. You know, it's not a problem.
right,
It's
right.
There was an opportunity. They might, you never know. But 10 years later, I think it's past. It was a game that's going to be on a Mac and a PC. Beautifully done. Unfortunately, they funded it. They got enough of the stuff to build it, but something happened with one of the people they were doing the game with, and it turned into a costly legal suit, which then wiped
Gotcha.
out the funds. And they were
It's
trying to do
all
it,
fell apart.
but what it did was it that got me interested in making something. Right, I want to make a game because I'm an old 8-bit console. Like over there,
Right.
I've got a piece over there. I've got a Sega Mega Drive, which you had as the Genesis, the Sega
Yeah,
Genesis.
yeah.
We had it was
That
called
was
Mega
one of my
Drive,
favorite consoles, actually.
and then I've also got a consoleized um what's it called? Uh Neo Geo, right? Which was
Gotcha.
the machine, but it was all 16, 32-bit graphics. It was all that pixelated graphics, right? And that's what this
Right.
game was that was on Kickstarter. And then I went, I want to make my own game. And actually that's what got me to get an iPad. I found a program you could write on the train. I bought the iPad, and it was to actually code games. It was to painting. I then switched to painting when I did this game. I did these two games they were on the Apple Store for years. I stopped doing it a couple of years ago because I'm like, I'm not paying for it, because they were free. But I learned how to make the game on the commute. So when I talk about painting on the commute, I actually was coding in something called Codeer.
Oh wow.
And let's see if I can get this running. Run. No, for some reason, Codeer isn't going to play ball. Why aren't you playing ball? No. Oh, I can't get this to run anymore. Ah. Right, I have to update that on my iPad. I've got my phone
Probably about like mine. It's jammed up with stuff.
jammed up. Hang on, let's see if I can find it. But I did this game, and I needed to do a poster for it, and then that's what I started using Photoshop to paint the poster for it. And see if I can find it. Star Scepter. Here we go. So this is the game, right?
Gotcha.
I'll just. Can you hear the music?
Yeah.
So it was this 8 sort of game. Had cutscenes.
Oh wow.
You shoot,
Yeah.
you collect things, you do all sorts of stuff, but it had a poster art in it, and that's what got me into doing it. So Star Mazer, even though it never made like their game, Star Mazer, even though it never materialized on Kickstarter, never materialized. At least it triggered me to get to where I'm now with comics. And I think sometimes something doesn't work out, but it gets you somewhere else, and I think that's what's quite cool.
When one door closes, a window opens somewhere else. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Richard, I've taken up too much of your time already. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I hope this was just the first of many times you'll join me on here. I tell you, you've gained a lifelong fan. I absolutely love your book. I love what you're doing. I can't wait to see what else you have coming down the pike in the future. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Jay. Thanks for having me. I'm enjoying reading the rest of these, so it's going to happen. So thank you so much for sending it. And thanks for inviting me. Exactly. Another lifelong comic maker friend. Do you know what I mean? That's what I love about
Exactly. Exactly. I had an absolute blast. Hey, best of luck with the projects you've got coming up, and hope to see you on here again soon, brother. It was a pleasure. Take care, Richard. Bye bye.
Take care. Bye.
Hey guys, you want to support the channel? Be sure and drop a like, put those comments down in there. I'd love to talk with you guys. Like to make this a community. Other ways to support the channel, hey, go to my website at jerrycooleyart.com. That's www.jerrycooleyart.com. You can pick up my comics, t-shirts, prints, all kinds of stuff. Be sure and go on there and check that stuff out if you're interested in any of my work. You can also follow me on Instagram at JerryCooley77 and also at Blue Sky to see what I'm up to as far as comics. Hey, love to see you there. Jump on, give me a follow on all those socials. Thanks for watching the show. Till next time, you guys, have a blessed one.